Good morning. Welcome to Module 5. This is like the fifth time I've tried to record this, so hopefully it'll work today. I'm at home and my husband keeps on coming back in the house. So today's Veterans Day. So if you're a veteran or married to a veteran, know a veteran, wish them a happy Veterans Day. We are a house full of veterans. My husband, my son, my father-in-law. I have two brothers. So lots of veterans in our house. So happy Veterans Day if you are a veteran. So I just wanted to do two things today. First, we're going to go over your assignments for this coming module. And then I want to add additional information from your chapter. So let me share my screen and I'm going to go over what is due this week. So we're going to log into MyFire. And let me go over everything with you. Looks like I'm going to have to try this again. Here we go. Okay, looks like you can see this now. So let me go to content. I'm going to go to module 5. And you can see in the learn section, you are to read chapter 5 of your text. It's called Written Language, Reading and Writing. But if you saw my announcement, you saw that I added an additional article to read. I also want you to read this article. It is called Decoding, Reading and Writing, the Double Helix Theory of Teaching. So you have chapter 5 and this article. When you do your discussion and reflection, I want it to include the article and your textbook. The reason I'm doing this is your textbook is 8 years old, and I'm actually going to be kind of redesigning the course with a new textbook pretty soon. So the information in your textbook is not incorrect, but there are some new science. With the science of reading, there's some new developments that you need to be aware of. So I want you to read this article and chapter 5, okay? The other thing you're going to do is, after you've read it, the good news is you do not have to do a discussion post for Module 5. So no discussion post. And the reason I've decided not to do that like I did a couple weeks ago is because you do have a major assignment. So you'll do the summary and reflection of chapter 5 and the article. And then your big assignment this module is your video recording and reflection. So most of you are going to be a video record yourself teaching a reading language arts lesson. You need to review it several times. It's really important that you watch yourself on the video. You need to talk about what you did well, what you could have done better. If you had an opportunity to reteach the lesson, what would you do differently? You're going to write a synopsis of your lesson and reflect on what you learned by observing yourself. So there's 3 parts to this. There's the summary of the lesson, the reflection of your teaching, including research-based practices. So you need to back up what you did, or even if you didn't. You're not being graded on if you did something wrong in the video, but what I want you to reflect on it, and if you could have improved, show me why. That's what we're trying to learn here. And then you also need to include that actual lesson plan. Do I have a specific format for your lesson plan? No, but I am looking for some basics like standards, objectives, your teaching procedures, and your assessment. Okay. Now, I did have an alternative assignment. If you are we have a couple people that are not in school. So I said, if you're a homeschooling parent, there's an option for you to do that. That if you're a homeschooling parent, you're going to design a series of lessons that guide your student through the writing process, looking at pre-writing, planning, outlining, drafting, revising, editing, and sharing. So you're not going to have like 6 different lesson plans, but you'll have paragraphs on what you'll do. And then you would have 4 parts to your lesson. You're going to have 6 mini lessons, reflection of your teaching, aligned with best practices, your lesson plan. And I want to actually have the video of you teaching. And the reason is I'm not requiring the video for other students is because there's so many legalities of recording students. Another option I said is you can video record yourself and then I will be giving you feedback. So this is for students that are not teaching, they're not homeschooling. You're going to your video record yourself just like you had kids. And so there are 4 parts to your reflection. That's going to be the summary, the reflection of your teaching, the synopsis and reflection. Oh, and then your lesson plan and the actual video. Okay. And there is a rubric for that. So I'll be looking for that you have the amount of information, the summary of the lesson. It portrays the lesson that was taught. Evaluation and reflection of the video is detailed, research-based. You have good mechanics. You have at least one peer-reviewed reference used in the evaluation section, and it's an APA format. So that's how that will be graded. So again, for module 5, 2 assignments, you're going to do your discussion. You're going to do your summary and reflection over chapter 5 and the article. And then you have your video recording synopsis. There will be no discussion post this week. Okay, I want to start by talking to you a little about where we're at in the United States. So I want you to think about this question, literacy. Literacy do you believe literacy is essential for academic, social, and economic success? Do you believe it's a basic human right? Do you believe it's an issue of equity and social justice? If you do, how we teach reading really needs to change. And so I want to show you our current NAEP scores in the United States. And again, I thought I had this open, but I guess I did not. So let's try this here. So I will be sharing this with you. Here we have NAEP. Now, if you're not familiar with NAEP, NAEP is the national report card. In the United States, we take this test in 4th, 8th, and 12th grade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. And this gives our NAEP scores. So I'm going to go down here a little bit. There's so much information in this report. You can go to your state, you can go to your county, and you can look at the NAEP scores. So I'm going to start with the report for 4th graders in the United States in reading. And again, this is the only test that's nationwide that everybody takes, no matter where you're at in the United States. And it's in 4th, 8th, and 12th grade. So we can see from this report here that in 2019, 26% of students in 4th grade were considered proficient readers. That went down by 2 points to 24%. So we can see in 2022, 37% were below basic, 29 were basic. That's where we are in the United States. So it actually went down a little bit from 2019 to 2022. Now, you can actually go now to look at the decline by ethnic and racial. So we can see that it went down for almost everybody except for Asian Americans. And so this will give you how the average score for for demographics, male, female, if they're in rural, if they're in town. You can go to different parts of the country. So in the South, I can see Florida had a decrease. So this shows us what states had a decrease, no significant change, or increase. So let's see, did anyone have one and that is DS. Is that Department of, yeah, Department of Defense, where I used to work. So the Department of Defense Education Activity, DODEA, went up. It looks like the only place that went up. And yeah, that's where I was a principal at for many, many years and worked there. So very proud. On Veterans Day, we can see that the one area was the military kids went up. So the reason I'm showing you this report is I want you to see where we are in the United States, and where we are is students are not proficient in reading. So you may think that's pretty disheartening, and it is, but the good news is that what we know is from the science of reading is that we know how kids learn to read. That's the good part. Our brains are not naturally wired to read. Students need direct, explicit, systematic instruction. And this is why we have an emphasis on foundational reading skills, where you're explicitly teaching those foundational skills. Sorry, it's telling me I'm the only one in my meeting. Okay, so we're going to move on a little. I'm not going to be able to show this now, but I'm going to put in here a video about the science of reading. You guys saw that in Module 1, but I want to just kind of refresh your mind about the science of reading. But basically, the science of reading is just over 50 years of accumulated research, and that tells us what kids need to do to read. So you'll watch that. But what that research shows, evidence-based, is we have to have decoding and comprehension to gain meaning. That's what we call the simple view of reading. If kids cannot decode, if they do not know those foundational skills, they cannot become readers. So you have to do that. You have to teach explicitly decoding and comprehension. Now, I'm also going to hope that you will watch this video of Scarborough's reading rope. I will post that on announcements. But basically, this is Scarborough's reading rope. And Scarborough's reading rope says that, according to this theory that she developed, we have foundational skills: phonological awareness, decoding, sight words. And then we have language comprehension, background knowledge, language structures, vocabulary, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. That would include text structure and so forth. You have to have both of those in order to read. So here we have our foundational skills, and here we have language, and together, those foundational skills include decoding. We have to be automatic with those. Comprehension, we have to be strategic with those. So we know that effective teaching is rooted in some of these big principles. Children's experiences outside of education, how they influence family and community, is also important. But that's not considered in Scarborough's reading rope. That's why I want you to read the article about the helix approach, because what that theory is saying is that there's more to it. We have to consider background knowledge. We have to consider motivation. Another principle is meaning, comprehension, and composition are main drivers of reading and writing. Reading and writing should go together. And in Chapter 5, you're going to be looking at those reading processes and writing processes. They're connected. Grammar and punctuation of language, text structures, phonology, spelling are all at a core of reading. So let me go back to this article. Nope, not that one. Well, that's what you will see in the helix model. Sorry about that. Okay. Again, there we go. Okay. So motivation, meaning, and comprehension. In the article you'll read, you're going to see that with the helix model, that's at the center of what we're talking about with reading. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can add that to your screen over here. So let me do that real quick. Here we go. Okay. So this is the article that you're going to be reading. And I love it has the components of Scarborough's reading rope, but it shows that reading and writing are connected. So we know that students have to know phonological awareness. They have to know phonemes, letters, morphemes. They also have to know text structure, sentences, words. That's all vocabulary. That's all similar to Scarborough's reading rope. The difference is what they have here, motivation and meaning. So with the Helix model, we're really considering motivation and meaning, that's going to impact comprehension and composition. So we know that reading and writing, according to this model, develop together. The child and their environment, including appropriate text, work together. Okay, so let me get back to where we were at before. And like I said, I know I have a lot to share this week, but hopefully you'll stick with me. So if we are, when we consider the Helix, when we consider this, I'm going to kind of skip through there if you want to see some of the samples of how to, let me just go back. I shared some of these at the beginning, but here is an example of a block, of a reading block. So the thing is, you have to include all of these aspects of reading in your reading block. If you're a first grade teacher, you have to include phonics, you have to include phonemic awareness, you have to include vocabulary, comprehension. How do you include all of that? Of course, that's going to look different if you teach 7th and 8th grade. You're not going to spend as much time in phonics, although you may need to if your students are not reading on grade level. So these are examples of schedules. Okay, so here you have your block, your ELA block. What will that look like? And in your textbook on page 123, it talks about these types of reading. It does not give an interactive read aloud, but I want to explain what an interactive read aloud is. An interactive read aloud is when you're reading to kids, they do not have to read it because you are reading it to them. It's usually at grade level or above grade level, and it helps with comprehension, helps with vocabulary, and you're modeling fluency. Your book does talk about shared reading. This is, again, the students, you are reading it with the kids, but they have a copy of the text. And so most school districts now, the Basel series, the kids have their own copy and they can write, they can annotate. That's what we want to do. So with shared reading, it's at the grade level you're teaching. So if you're a 3rd grade teacher, it's a 3rd grade text. And every kid can see the book. Either they have their own copy, it's on a smart board, or it's a big book. Now, in your book, they talked about guided reading. Really, with the science of reading, we're really trying to get a little bit away from guided reading and call it instead structured small groups. So what's the difference? It's like what we read in Module 1. With guided reading, you really just stuck with leveled text. What I want you to think about is, instead of just grouping kids by their levels, whether their reading level, you need to think even more strategically in that. So in the article we read before, we talked about you need to assess the kids and then use the correct book to line up with what they need. So usually these small groups can have to do with, you might have a fluency group, you might have a comprehension group, you might have a phonics group. So it's more skill-based than just leveled. Do you have to consider levels? Of course you do, but you should not just include levels. So when we get to our last module, Module 8, you're actually going to be given a list of students, and they're going to have you're going to have a lot of different assessment data about them, and you're going to put them in structured groups according to that data. Then we have independent reading. So independent reading is when kids are reading at their independent level. So you can see how that's scaffolded. It starts with interactive read aloud, where the teacher has total control. Shared reading, they're reading together. Structured small groups, that's at the level that the student can read. So it has to be differentiated. And then independent reading. So you can see that in an ELA block, you should really have all different types of gradual release of responsibility. And then word study. Don't forget word study in your ELA block. For younger kids, that's going to be phonics, phonemic awareness. For older kids, it's going to be a lot of vocabulary, a lot of looking at morphemes and prefixes, suffixes, and so forth. And then we have the same thing with writing. You also are going to include, and you can see with this how the scaffolding decreases. We have independent writing, where kids are writing on their own. Interactive writing, where you are writing with the student. And then shared writing, where the teacher and the student are writing together. And then you can have small groups for writing, just like you have for reading, that are explicitly taught. So I'm going to stop there because I've talked a lot today. So today, actually this module, the whole thing is about the reading and writing processes. And it tells you you're going to read a lot about the reading process, about pre-reading, reading, responding, exploring, applying. And then you're also going to read about what that looks like in writing. I shared with you about the need for explicit instruction. This is all based on data that we're getting from NAEP scores and other scores that are showing that our kids are not proficient in reading. The good thing is, this is job security, they need you. They need you to provide explicit instruction on whatever they need help with. And so that's why this is so important. Then I shared with you in my PowerPoint what that might look like in the classroom, how your block may look. So hopefully I've given you a lot to think about and consider. Again, you'll read chapter 5, you'll do the article. You are then going to do your chapter discussion and reflection. There is no discussion post this week, but you do have a paper where you're going to be teaching your lesson. And what I really hope that you will do is, whether you're doing reading or writing, do direct, explicit instruction that's research-based, because that's what our kids need. Okay, that's all. Have a wonderful day. And if you're off today, I'm happy for you. Okay, bye-bye.